Page 118. White. I studied the diplomas on Golub's office wall. He graduated from St. John's before he went to law school at the University of Connecticut. He talked about the case with my dad and how he would get me off. The two of them went over all the holes the states had to fill in. The DA didn't have a gun or a witness who said I was a shooter. Sidney Parker couldn't pick out my pictures, and the woman who identified me wasn't positive. The two of them talked about me like I was completely innocent. It didn't bother me to hear Golub talk that way. He was my lawyer. He was getting paid to believe in me, but I could hear in my dad's voice what he knew about the gun. I hated making a liar out of him, and I knew how angry he was. "But can we trust Marcus not to claim you were there?" Golub said. "When the noose gets tied around somebody's neck, they're liable to say anything to save their own skin." "And even if he did, who'd believe him?" my dad sneered. "We'll worry about it when or if it happens," Golub answered. On the way home, I thanked my dad for everything he was doing for me. But he just said, "Do you know how much money this is costing me and your mother?" That night I was doing set of push-ups when Rose marched into my room. She said she just couldn't believe that me and Marcus would really do something so crazy. "How could you point a gun at someone?" she asked. "I don't know," I answered her, with my stomach flat against the floor. That was about the biggest confession I had made to anyone. Rose went on about me and Marcus going to jail and how it would ruin the rest of our lives. I told her that my lawyer was on top of things, that I'd beat the case and play in college next year. "If that bus driver wasn't so sure it was Marcus, this wouldn't be happening," I said. "I guess that would have made everything all right," she said, kicking me in the ass. On Saturday, it got all the way up to 55 degrees without any wind at all. When it's cold for a long time, any little bit of sun feels like summer. I knew the circle would be packed with players. By 1 o'clock it would be prime time. That's when the older kids, who partied late on Friday nights, would get out of bed and fill the courts. Me and Marcus had made every Saturday at the circle for almost 5 years straight. We worked our way up from the bottom of the pile to the top. It killed me to think about not playing on a day that nice, but everybody there would be asking about what happened. Besides, the cops might even be watching in the park undercover, trying to show we did everything together. By 2 o'clock I was bored out of my mind and decided to go out. I wore heavy jeans and a pair of Timberlands. That way, no matter what, I couldn't wind up on a basketball court. I walked around for maybe 15 minutes until I couldn't take it anymore. I turned around all at once and headed for the circle. I was cursing myself all the way there for being so stupid, but if I couldn't play, I at least had to see what was going on without me. I jumped the little fence that separates the sidewalk from the grass so nobody would see me coming. Then I poked my head around the corner of one of the buildings. Probably every guy who ever had a beef in that park checked the place out the same way. The circle was mobbed. Somebody had just made a shot to win the game. Half of the players were walking off the court and a new crew was coming on. I looked over every part of the park twice. Marcus wasn't there. When I got back home, my mom had a sour look on her face and said there was a message on the answering machine for me. We had stopped picking up the phone in case it was a reporter of St. John's. Until everything calmed down, my dad wanted Mr. Golub to do all the talking, and so did I. Before I hit the playback button, my mother rushed upstairs. She didn't want any part of hearing what was on that tape again. "Eddie, it's Rebecca. My parents saw the article in the paper and freaked out. They won't let me go out with you tonight. Don't call back here or anything. I'll call you tomorrow afternoon when I can get out of the house. We can do something then, I promise. Bye." I explained everything to Rebecca after the story came out. That it was all a mistake. How after the cops decided it was Marcus, they looked for somebody close for him. She was worried for me, and I was relieved she didn't treat me like a criminal, but I didn't really know her parents and wasn't surprised by their reaction. The next morning the phone rang just after 11 o'clock. My mom and Rose were at church, and my dad was working overtime. I didn't want Rebecca to get the answering machine again, so I picked the phone up on the second ring. "Eddie Russo, this is Steve Jenkins, the coach of the basketball program at St. John's," the deep voice said. "Good morning, Coach Jenkins," I answered slowly. He said that hearing back from my lawyer was fine, but that he really wanted to talk to me or my parents. He asked me how I was holding up under the pressure and if I was still going to school every day. I told him I was on track to graduate, and nothing would stop me. "Once you sign that letter and commit to St. John's, you're a member of our family. If you ever need somebody to talk to, you can come to me or one of the school guidance counselors. We're always going to be here for you," he said. "But remember, a felony conviction is serious business and would cost you the scholarship." I told him how much I appreciated everything and that my lawyer had it all under control, and I'd be ready to start in the fall. When we were finished, I felt like I had just walked through a minefield without taking a single bad step. I was so pumped up that I ran around the house practicing layups and jumping up the ball off my feet. But when I finally started to come back down, I felt sick, and I hated every lie that had come out of my mouth. On Monday, I was all geared up for practice. The starters scrimmaged against the scrubs, and I made sure our side was going all out. I hit my first 6 shots and was really feeling it. My next jumper fell short off the front lip of the rim, so I charged the basket and grabbed my own rebound. I jammed the ball home over Preston and shot him a look like he didn't even belong on the court with me. The ball kicked loose between a dozen legs. There were a bunch of arms just reaching for it. I hit the floor and hauled it in. It cost me some skin off my right knee and elbow, but it was worth it. I was setting the tone, and everyone on my squad was following me. It was flowing good between me and Marcus, too. The starters never let up, and we just crushed them. Casey watched without saying a word. When he finally blew the whistle for us to stop, he said, "That's the way to get it done, boys." I tried to give Marcus a pep talk on the way home. I started out with the playoffs and worked my way over to how the case would blow up in the DA's face, but the second I quit talking, Marcus cleared his throat. "I don't think taking the case to trial is going to work for me," he blurted out. "Parker knows it was me, and I don't think I can pretend it wasn't. I don't want to screw this up for you. Maybe your lawyer's just smarter than mine. Miss Torres doesn't think there's a thing she can say to make me look good. I need to take whatever she can get me." I drop-kicked my book bag halfway down the block. I felt like Marcus was just giving up. Then something snapped and I just went off on him. "Whatever she can get for you? What about me, my brother? You want to plead guilty? But that's only going to hurt my case. Do you get some kind of points from the DA for that?" I yelled at him. Before the last words left my mouth, Marcus exploded. "You lousy little shit," he screamed, wrapping both of his arms around my jacket collar. He drove me back against the side of a brick building, and I felt the air pop out of my lungs when I hit. "We got into this mess together, but it's just me paying for it, and I haven't complained one fucking inch about it," he seethed with his face pressed up against mine. "And all you want to know from me is how clean I can keep you?" I didn't move a muscle or say anything. I just tried to look into his eyes, but he was so close that I could barely make them out. Then Marcus loosened his grip and stepped back. I felt lower than the curb, and stupid too. I looked around to see if anybody on the street was listening. There were a couple of people who turned their heads, but they all just kept walking. I caught my breath and took a closer look at Marcus. "I know I've been seeing it all my way," I told him. "It's just been hard, all right?" We didn't talk for the rest of the way home, but I listened to the sound of his footsteps. They never slowed down or picked up once. He just kept the same steady pace. Right before we split up, I gave Marcus a pound and said, "Black and white through thick and thin." He nodded his head as he pulled his fist back from mine. "That hasn't changed from my side one time," he said. "Not one time." That night Mr. Golub called. I heard the sound of his voice on the answering machine before my dad picked up. It was dry, without any emotion, so I knew that I had been indicted by the grand jury. Dad held the phone to his ear and listened to him talk. Every couple of seconds he gave Golub an "all right" or "okay." When they were through, my dad broke the news. It was like when my grandpa had been sick for a long time, and everybody knew that he was going to die. Nobody was shocked. We were all pretty much prepared for it. It was the same with getting indicted. I was surprised how well my mother took it. She shook her head and her eyes got wet, but she didn't fall apart. I tried not to react to it because it didn't matter much. I was going to face a lot worse before it was finished. I just wished Marcus would fight like I was. Casey spent half of our next practice at the blackboard diagramming all the plays he wanted to run that Friday. It felt more like school than a basketball. Everybody had to take notes on where to go for every play. We already had it all in our notebooks at home, but Casey wanted us to write it all out again. "From your fingers to your brains," Casey said. "We'll do it on paper, then walk it through on the court." We hardly broke a sweat, but it was one of the toughest practices we had all year. We walked around each other in circles one step at a time. Me and Marcus did a slow dance together through every offensive set. We even had to pass an invisible ball back and forth, and after a while my arms started to get heavy. On the way home, Marcus froze in his tracks. He stood in front of me face to face and told me he was still going to take a plea. "You're just playing the cops game," I said. "It's not a game for me anymore," said Marcus. "No, because you're giving up. You're quitting on me and it's making me look worse," I told him. "Listen, it was your gun and your mistake," he came back. "And I asked you to hold it that night, but you quit on me then too," I said, turning away from him. It all stopped as fast as it came, and we just walked. But I knew from the sound of his voice that nothing I could say would make a difference. After Marcus left, I wondered how it would feel to be free of this whole thing. Or at least to tell everyone the truth. I stood in the corner of my block and looked out into the traffic. Then I pulled up everything I'd been thinking about and feeling. I opened my mouth wide to scream, but not a sound came out. I was watching TV in the living room when Rose came downstairs. She made me turn it off and started an introduction using her hand as a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, Long Island City High School presents Senior Night," she said out loud. "We'd like to acknowledge the parents of our senior athletes for the contributions they've made." My mom and dad started down the stairs, arm in arm. Mom was wearing a maroon dress with a blue and white bow. Dad had on his black suit that he only wore to funerals and weddings. When they reached the bottom, Rose pretended to snap pictures. Senior night was usually the last home game of the year, but once we clinched home court advantage for the playoffs, the seniors on the team voted to have it before our first playoff game. Then the gym would really be rocking that night. The lights in the gym got completely turned out and everything is pitch black. A white spotlight comes on and each senior player walks his parents out to center court. Then the player gives his mother a bouquet of roses and everybody applauds. My mom had been looking forward to senior night since I was a freshman. It was a way to say thank you to her in front of everybody. My dad fidgeted with his suit. He kept running his finger between his neck and his shirt collar, trying to breathe. How am I supposed to sit at a basketball game in a monkey suit, he said before he pulled off his tie to watch TV. Marcus showed up at school the next day wearing his suit. I saw him walk into English class and did a double take. He said that he was going down to the DA's office with his mother later on. His lawyer was going to be there too, to read over the pleas before he signed it. He took a deal to be home in 19 months. He said he'd even get it shortened if he didn't get into anything stupid while he was locked up. It was giving him 3 weeks to report to jail. Marcus laughed and said that was just enough extra time for us to win the city championship. Casey knew all about it and cleared Marcus to miss practice that day. That way he could still start in the playoffs game on Friday. All through class, I watched Marcus out of the corner of my eye. My stomach was twisting into knots. Kids were still reading their essays in class. Miss Sussman hadn't called in either me or Marcus yet. There weren't that many kids left to go. I knew that I'd be on the spot soon. There were just 5 minutes left in the period when she called my name. I started to read as fast as I could. I didn't want to hear myself with Marcus sitting there that way. But Miss Sussman stopped me in the middle of the first sentence. She told me to stand up while I was reading and to slow down. So I had to go back to the beginning. I'd like people to remember me as somebody they could depend on, no matter what happens. I'm always right there. I'm not the kind of person who walks away when things get tough. I don't care if it's crunch time on the basketball court or in the last play of a football game. I'm willing to put myself on the line.